Guys, we just wrapped up an awesome episode with Ben from WODprep. You probably have seen this guy on social media. He is one of the big faces in the CrossFit scene, and he's been around for a very, very long time. In this episode, we talk about his story. He shares some things that have never been shared before on a podcast. We also talk about things like the CrossFit Open, how to prepare for the CrossFit Open, and he talks about his journey with WODprep. Fascinating. Enjoy it.
Ben from WODprep, welcome to the show today. Number one, I'm just like super excited that you're even here talking to me. Um, uh, if I may kind of introduce kind of my introduction to you, and then you can fill in the gaps wherever. Is that cool?
That sounds great.
So my first foray into the Open was 2017 officially. That was my first Open that I registered for. But when I started CrossFit, I was doing Olympic weightlifting, and the only place I could find a gym that had upper plates, just like any other weightlifter, was in a CrossFit gym. And then I was suggested to try the Open or try an Open workout, and so I saw one where it was something like a descending rep scheme of 18, 15, 12, or whatever of thrusters and bar facing purpose. And I thought, well, that can't be that bad. And it literally took me about 45 minutes to finish
Yep.
because I didn't know what pacing was. I didn't know what really a thruster was, even though I was learning how to do a clean and jerk. And it was just bad news the whole time. So when I got into my first Open in 2017, just like anyone who kind of falls in deep with the sport, is how do I do this and not take 45 minutes to do what other people could do in 6 minutes? And I don't know how it happened, but on YouTube, I saw your videos about, tips for doing these Open workouts. And it was a dude who was working out. I couldn't tell if he was working out in like a rec center or on a military base or something, but I saw
Yep,
like
it
an
was a military
overhang.
base.
Oh,
That's
okay,
cool.
there you go. So yeah, I saw pull-up bars and everything, and it's like, oh, this guy seems to know what he's talking about. Definitely more than me. And ever since then, I would watch an Open prep video by Ben from WODprep to see if my strategy was terrible or somewhat there, and making adjustments in between that. So that's my introduction to you. Now, could you fill in the gaps and introduce yourself, Ben?
Sure. Yeah. Like you said, my name's Ben, and I run WODprep, and our goal at WODprep is to help CrossFitters get better at CrossFit. So we help
Mm,
people advance their skills, whether that's in gymnastics or whether that's weightlifting or strategy. We just all encompassing help CrossFitters get better at CrossFit. Our goal is mainly to help people who are scaled athletes or maybe somewhat RX transfer
mm,
to RX. We just basically want to ascend people in their abilities. So usually we help by helping people RX more of their movements, whether that's gymnastic movements, weightlifting, stuff like that, and just generally overall increasing their performance. And kind of
yeah.
like you alluded to, our primary, basically how most people find WOD prep is year over year, we try to do our best to release really, really good open content. So we really
Mm,
focus on the CrossFit Open as a time where we make a lot of free content that we try to make the best that we can. And usually that's strategy videos and a few other things that we do. And that's how a lot of people find WOD prep. So when I've been at the CrossFit Games and other events, a lot of people are just like, even if they're not like really in the ecosystem of WODprep, maybe they haven't purchased
yeah.
any of our products. They're like, "Oh, you're that guy who does those open videos." Um, so,
Exactly.
so the open is definitely a very near and dear time for WODprep. It's a time that a lot of
Mm.
people really pipe up and listen to what we say and pay attention. And we always just try to deliver the best free content that we possibly can, even if someone never buys a single thing from us or never joins any of our courses or programs.
Mm.
That's fine. I still want to have a lot of free content that helps people level up their CrossFit abilities and really, really help people get through the open. So that's WOD prep in a nutshell.
Right on. And I think one thing that there's so many things that you said that I want to ask about, but the first thing that I need to ask is the difference maker in your videos is like you said yourself, you're not trying to give tips to someone who's like a bubble games athlete or something,
Right.
but that seems to be like 80% of the videos you see. I remember seeing another video of someone giving tips from, I forget what training camp, but it was, the one where it was 55 calories row, 55 deadlifts, 55 wall balls, 55 handstand push-ups. And then as an idea of who this video is for, they were saying your wall ball shots need to be basically air squats, which I can't do 10 wall balls and make that feel like air squats. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like for the
Yeah.
vast majority of people to be able to do 15 wall ball shots unbroken is an accomplishment in and of itself. Never mind
Right.
in a big ass workout like a chipper like that.
Yeah.
So, why did it become important to you? And I think that is what speaks to people. To speak to the people who are, maybe your weekend warrior or your middle of the road person, just someone who wants to enjoy the sport. Like, why was that for you, the audience you wanted to speak to?
Sure. I think early on, when I first started making WODprep videos back in 2014, I realized that, especially at the time, all the other strategy videos, and there was like maybe like two or three,
Mm,
they were all focused on people who were very, very good at CrossFit. They were like
yeah.
people the videos were for me. They were for
Mm,
athletes who had competitive aspirations and were training hard, and okay, let's say a workout had 15 toes to bar. They're like, all right, yeah, do the 15 toes to bar unbroken and then move on to the next movement. And I had owned an affiliate for a couple years. I owned a
mm,
gym called Blue Crab CrossFit in Maryland, in the USA. And when I saw these videos, I'm like, I can't send these to my members, right? I can't just tell people in my gym to, you know, obviously do 15 toes to bar unbroken. Most people were still trying to learn how to do their first set of unbroken toes to bar.
right.
So I think when I came up with the idea for WOD Prep, I realized that like 85% of the people doing the open had
Mm,
zero content that was dedicated to them. There was
mm,
all the strategy guides, that was back when the Outlaw Way still existed, way back when. Invictus had some stuff, OPEX. All these strategy guides were for like, yeah, games caliber, or at the time regionals caliber athletes. And that's
right.
only like the top 1%, maybe top 2%. So many athletes who were doing the open and loved it and wanted to get their best score just had nothing that was there to help them.
You know what it
They were
felt
like
like? It was,
they were like
yeah.
an
Yeah,
afterthought, but even though that was
right.
like most of the market, so it just didn't make any sense to me. So that's why we really focused on like the average person, the average person who's like,
Mhm.
the CrossFit isn't their full-time job. It's just a hobby, and it's like a sport that they do for fun. And most of those people need help learning how to RX these workouts and just be able to complete the workout, not get a top level regional score. So that's where
Yeah.
we really started to focus our efforts.
Yeah, the funny thing, like, I guess the closest allusion to that would be that meme of how do you draw an owl? Step one, draw the eyes. Step two, draw the beak. And step three is like, draw the rest of the damn owl, and that's it. And
Right,
like that
right.
seemed to be like the extent of tip videos. And I think you mentioned Outlaw, and I think that was the one where it was like, what you're talking about, I'd love to get there one day. I don't think I'm even there.
Right.
So that was really cool to see that, the tips that you gave were so practical and realistic for most people. And you mentioned it yourself, is you had your own aspirations to compete as well. What was your competitive career like, and what does that look like today?
Sure. So let's see, I started CrossFit in 2007, I think, technically. My
Mm,
football team did it in high school, my senior year of high school. I didn't know we were doing CrossFit until I think 2008 is when I found my first CrossFit.com workout. I did that,
oh, I see.
and I was hooked. I threw up the first time, and then I saw all these results that other people were posting on
Yeah.
CrossFit.com, and I was like, "How are these people so fit? This is ridiculous." I thought I was in shape, so that was like, was like an ego thing where I'm like, "What? How are these people beating me?"
Right.
Um, my competitive career kind of started while I was in college, and I competed on the regional team a couple years. I think it was 2 years. I competed on the regional team for the local
Mm,
CrossFit gym in Raleigh, North Carolina. It was called CrossFit Invoke, and we were pretty good. We actually made it the year that I competed, which was 2013. I competed at regionals. I think, finished one place out of making it to the CrossFit Games, and
oh man.
And that one place honestly was just like we just had a mess up in one of our workouts, and there was someone who basically just burnt out and couldn't get their chest to bar pull-ups done, and like we
Yeah.
just dropped from games qualifying team to just outside, which was really a bummer.
It's all
And
fake
what was
sometimes. Yeah.
yeah, and at the time, like the Mid-Atlantic region was really, really competitive. So like all of these teams that made it to the games, I think all of them finished in the top 10 when they actually made it to the game. So it was frustrating because like we missed our chance. And if we had made it, I think like the
Yeah.
team that beat us out ended up getting like seventh or something like that. So we would have had a pretty good run, I think, at the games. So that was frustrating. And then the next year, I tried to go as an individual because at that point I had graduated college, and I was I had my own affiliate that I was coaching people at, and
Mhm.
I wanted to make a run at individual. So I was training with a games athlete, Gary Helmick, and we were throwing down training every single day pretty much, and I was pretty good. And that year to qualify for regionals, it was kind of crazy. He In the open, I got a like staph infection on my leg,
Oh,
and so
geez. Okay.
I was in the top at that point. It was top 48 people made it to regionals as an
Mhm.
individual. I was pretty solidly in the top 48, and then going into what would have been like my best workout of the
Yeah.
open, or maybe the second best workout of the open, I got like a really bad staph infection and couldn't walk for like that weekend. And then I hit the workout basically Monday right before the cutoff. I like threw up during the workout because I was on all kinds of medication and stuff like that. And like long story short, I ended up not making regionals because I bombed that workout. And then the last workout wasn't a good workout for me. So I went from, regional qualifying athlete. I wouldn't have, made it to the games, but I would have been at regionals, and I probably would have been
Yeah.
mid-tier, probably in like the 20th, 30th range.
Mhm.
And then I fell out because of, the thing about the open is like you have like 4 days to do the workout, 5 days to do the
Right.
workout. And if you're not at your peak form during those 5 days, if something happens, you get injured, or in my case, got an infection in my leg. It was really bad.
Yeah.
Then you're screwed, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
So that was a bummer. That really like frustrated me because I trained really, really hard all year long. I was working on my weaknesses. I was, in probably the best shape I had ever been, and had that one thing kind of set me back. And then the next year they moved to only the top 20 making it to regionals, so the top 20 individuals, which was a okay move, but at that point I knew I was like, I am no longer a regional caliber
I
athlete.
see.
Like it was hard enough for me to make the top 48,
Mm.
and then moving it to the top 20, it's I don't think I want to train that hard. Like I don't think I want to dedicate so many hours in the gym. So
Right.
at that point, I kind of took a step back and started just focusing on business. I was still training
Mm.
hard. I still helped a team qualify for regionals as a team,
Mhm.
but because at that point I was like a military spouse, so my now ex-wife, but my wife at the time was in the military.
Mm.
I had to move from Maryland to Florida, and then
Mm.
right as we qualified for regionals with the team I was on down in Florida, I had to move to San Diego. So they were like, "Hey, you're moving. You're not going to be able to train with us, while we're
Mm.
practicing. So we're going to pick someone else." Even though I had, I think, the best score, or maybe the second best score in the Open on that team, and so I was pretty salty about that. I wanted to compete at regionals with them, but
Yeah.
they were, I understood what they were saying. They wanted someone on their team who could actually be there for practice. So
Yeah.
kind of like those 2 years of like not having a really fun experience, where it was like,
Mhm.
I really let myself down with not
Yeah.
being able to qualify as an individual. And then I helped the team qualify for the regionals as a team, but then they were like, "Oh, you're moving, you can't be at practice, so we're gonna not put you on the team." That really frustrated me. So then I kind of just during that time frame, I just focused all my efforts rather than my own individual competitive
Mm.
career. I just started focusing on business, and that's kind of where WODprep was born. And I started making uh, videos for the Open in 2014. They kind of caught on, and then
Mhm.
2015, 2016, I started having a couple videos kind of go viral on Facebook, and
Mhm.
launched my YouTube, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. And then I took all my competitive aspirations and really just focused them on the business. And And now for me, having done CrossFit for, I think 17 years now, it might even be 18.
Yeah, sounds like it.
No,
Yeah.
it's 17 years. It's been a while. I I don't compete. I don't have any desire to. I
Mm,
like getting into the gym a few times a week. I train hard and I just focus on the business and focus on my other hobbies. And now for me personally, like CrossFit just keeps me in shape for my other hobbies. You know, I
yeah.
still love it. I still love the constantly varied high intensity functional movements, performed at a high intensity. I love doing all the fun stuff, the muscle ups, the heavy snatches, the
Mhm.
handstand
Right.
walks. Like I love all that. I still do it. But in terms of competing, I don't really compete anymore. I've done some tactical game stuff, which is like out here in America, it's like shooting, you know,
Yeah.
marksmanship combined with
Right.
functional fitness. And I've competed that in a little bit, but really the competitive side of me is, you know, now I like competing more in business and competing in my hobbies and having
Yeah.
fun that way and just running a stable company. And, you know, we're obviously here. We have one-on-one coaching inside of WODprep that helps people get to the games, especially in the
Mhm.
masters division. But yeah, personal competition, not my thing anymore. I've been doing CrossFit for so long. I'm like, I don't want to compete anymore because I realize
Yeah.
how much it takes, especially to perform at a high level, which is if I
Right.
was going to compete, that's where I'd want to be. To perform at a high level, you have to dedicate your life to training. It's no longer like a side project, except for
Right.
very, very select few who have elite fitness and genetics. It can't be a side project. It has to be your full focus and effort, train multiple times a day. And that's just not something I want to do. I want to play outside too much.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, uh, I mean, am I on a similar trajectory? I don't know, but like just the idea, like you said, is I do love the aspects of CrossFit where there's just a multitude of things that you can always improve on. And then it's always because it's not just the skills, but it's the mixture of the skills in a short time domain where you're doing things at sprint pace or you're doing it at a 30-minute, long conditioning piece. Can you hold up with, the strategy and management of fatigue and just being smart with your pacing, all these different things? I love that. But I also used to love to run. I used to love to be outside. I used to be okay not ever being in a gym. And I don't know why, but something in me felt like I had this relationship with the gym was like I have to be here, but I also miss the outside. And like the gyms here in China, the one I go to at least doesn't have a lot of windows, so it's like I don't even know if it's 2 p.m. or 2 a.m.
Sure.
But I missed being out there. Now I just like I want to be able to complement my fitness in the gym with things I can do practically outside, where it means if I can run longer than I have before, because that's not something that we typically can do in CrossFit, although, it's something that we see in workouts every now and again. I
Right.
want to be able to enjoy my life and be able to, let my fitness kind of um apply in other aspects of my life, whether it's in hanging out with my kids or being a good
Yes.
coach or
Yeah.
just being a good and balanced person.
Yeah.
And with
And
yourself, yeah, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, like, I agree with that. Like, I think there's a lot of people in their CrossFit journey. Some people, they just, you know, they have that same mindset where they're like, I got to be in the gym. I got to, you know, and
Yeah.
that's fine. And that was me. Like I trained for 4 hours per day at least for a considerable amount of time, especially when I owned the gym. I just lived in the gym all
Yeah.
year long.
Right.
I had
Right.
that run. I was training all the time. And then I think there's a certain maturity that comes, you know, some people find it early in their CrossFit. They're like, hey, I do CrossFit because I want to be in shape and fit and
Mhm.
flexible and have cardio and strength. And I think it's a great mix. And then there's other people that like get hooked into like the full intensity, forging elite fitness version of
Yeah.
CrossFit. And they're like, if they miss a session, they freak out. And I'm very much on the
Oh
back end
man.
of that where I'm like, you know, like if something happens or something gets in the way and I have to skip a session, I'm like, yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be fine. You know, yeah, I might be a little
Okay.
bit more sore if I skip a couple
Right.
weeks of CrossFit when I come back, but
Yeah.
it's not something that's going to ruin my life. And I'm not super obsessed with it. I still
Mhm.
use it as a way to keep me healthy and in shape for doing the other things that I want to do, which I think CrossFit's really good
Exactly.
at. So yeah, it's a journey for everyone, but I agree. I do think some people get a little too excited and into it, and like if the only way that you express your fitness is inside
Mhm.
the walls of a gym, then I think maybe there's a disconnect of why you're doing fitness. You know, like I like
Yeah.
being able to do CrossFit so that all my other hobbies, all the outdoor hobbies I have here in Colorado get a little bit easier and I'm ready to tackle anything.
Yeah. What is the saying? There's not a lot of sayings in CrossFit, but one that I love, and it's kind of a punchline, is CrossFit is being able to do so many things in the gym, but being too tired outside of it to be able to show that you can.
That's
Right?
funny.
It's like it just stays in there.
I wanted to quickly interrupt this episode with a quick shout out to our sponsors, Today Well Spent. I've been using this journal for 2 years and it has made a massive impact on my physical, but mostly my mental well-being. It is a guided journal backed by neuro and behavioral science, which I actually didn't know at the time. It has questions for you to answer at the start of the day, at the end of the day, end of every week, end of every month. And it's brought so much self-awareness to me of the things that positively and negatively impact my life. So if you're someone who cares about your physical and your mental well-being, which I think you do because you listen to this podcast, then go and grab yourself a Today Well Spent. Use the discount code THEPROCESS, one word in capitals, to get your discount.
And I think maybe that's one of the things that does speak to a lot of people in your videos. It's like, look, if you don't have bar muscle ups, that doesn't make you a shit person, you know? Like
Right.
you can scale these things. And I was going through, in my homework here, I was going through your content on your website and your blog about, scaling movements properly. And you were alluding to this thing about the trap of the green band, where if you need to scale a pull-up, for example, I mean, why are you just always using a green pull-up or a green resistance band hanging from the top? Are you ever going to make any progress there? You should switch it up. And I mean, this is just one thing that I think is interesting, is the idea of scaling and being okay with that. Um, do you have just I'm curious to kind of scratch the surface here, is in your observation, what movement has the worst scaling and adjustments? I mean, I remember
Mm.
even in CrossFit, like the scaled versions of a handstand walk at one point was a bear crawl. And then at one point there was a scaled version of a strict handstand pushup being do a strict handstand pushup with one or two ab mats. And like
Right.
the gulf of who does it serve, right? Well, in your
Yeah.
opinion, what kind of movement has the worst scaling?
Oh man, that's a tough one because like in my mind, I think a creative coach can come up with a good scaling option for pretty
Mm,
much everything, and that's what makes
right.
CrossFit so special.
Hmm.
Um, I think, you know, earlier in my coaching days, I would say I think toes to bar, the natural scale was just like, oh yeah, just lift your knees. Like it was like knee raises.
Yeah.
Um, but I and I'm sure other coaches came up with it as well, but like I came up with the idea of like, hey, if you can't do toes to bar,
Mhm.
right, we can still do toes to almost bar. So
Yeah.
like I think that was a big one that I saw like a disconnect between like if you can't do toes to bar, then you're just doing knee raises. And that was like such a major scale. Like
Mhm.
there was like almost no middle ground because no one gave you permission to like do toes to bar where your toes are getting to basically like forehead level or something like
Yeah.
that, where you still get the same stimulus. Because I think with knee raises, you don't quite get the same, like knee raises are way down here in terms of like,
Right.
you know, and for those who are listening, like my hand's really low on the screen. Toes to bar are way up here at the top of the screen. And
Yeah.
there was like this huge middle ground that I think a lot of people didn't explore because it's like, well, how do we measure it? How do we, you know, how do we set a good standard? So I'd
Right.
say toes to bar is one that I saw where it's like, no, like in your progression towards learning toes to bar, you should be able to do workouts where, you know, you're not just focusing on trying to get through the movement as fast as possible. Even if you can't touch the
Mhm.
bar, I'd rather see you do kipping, you know, toes to as high as possible, whether that's actually putting a band target up in front of you or whether that's
Yes.
having like an imaginary line above your forehead where you're just trying to get your toes above your forehead every single time. I thought that was a better scaling option than saying, oh, just lift your knees above the horizontal plane because that's like way too easy for most people.
Yeah.
So that'd be one example. But I really do think that especially having existed for so long, CrossFit and good
Mhm.
coaches in CrossFit are able to find good modifications for pretty much everything. Like I think a great skill now for handstand walks, if you can't do handstand walks, like a great one would be like wall walks because
Mhm.
you're still
Yeah.
getting the same muscle group workout. You're still walking on your hands just with a wall to
Exactly.
support you. So I think you can get creative with pretty much all the movements, and it doesn't matter whether I have a superstar 25-year-old athlete or a 67-year-old woman who can't do any of the movements RX. She can still get the same sort of stimulus in a workout that that 25-year-old can.
Right, exactly. And stimulus is everything, right? It's like if you break down the workout of like, all right, what's our time domain? What are our muscle groups we're working with? Any coach that, really wants to help their athletes will break it down that way and provide accordingly the
Mhm.
right stimulus for them based on their ability level and kind of meeting them where they're at, right?
Yeah. And I think that's, a thing that's having been to a lot of CrossFit gyms. I've,
Mm,
easily attended over 100 different drop-in sessions at gyms all around the world, like everywhere, from Southeast Asia to Europe. I've been to CrossFit gyms all over.
yeah.
And there's some gyms and some coaches that I think do a really good job of presenting the workout and then presenting multiple variations of good scaling options so that people
Mm,
are always like, let's say there's a high skill workout.
yeah.
I think there's some coaches who do a good job of scaling it so that all the athletes in that class hit a stimulus that's challenging for them, but
Mm,
and maybe even helps them develop as an athlete and learn these skills and advance just a little bit more. But I have seen quite a bit of like, you know, let's say the workout has double unders, toes to bar, and pull ups. A
yeah.
coach will present the workout and they'll be like, hey, here's the workout. And then they will immediately say, okay, if you can't do double unders, toes to bar, and pull ups, then you're going to just do 2-to-1 single unders, knee raises, and yeah,
Yeah.
just use a band. And they just kind of
Yeah.
like, just scale it. And then
Yeah.
the person who's like, who can almost do double unders or almost,
Hmm.
or do a few of them and can do a few toes to bar and maybe a pull up or two, they immediately just say, okay, I'm going to scale this entirely. And then they just
Yeah.
breeze through the workout, no problem. So I think that's where it kind of comes down to a case by case basis on the gym or the coach. A good coach will present a better scaling option where it's like, hey, if you can't do the 50 double unders each round, but you can do double unders, I want you to get through 25 double unders. So
Hmm.
we're going to cut the reps in half, but not scale the movement entirely.
Right.
And same thing for toes to bar or do, toes to forehead or something like that. Not actually hitting the forehead, but getting it to forehead level. And then for the pull ups, it's like, hey, this workout has 10 pull ups per round. If you can't do that many pull ups, I want you to still do pull ups, just do less of them, maybe 5 per round, rather
Mm,
than saying, oh, yeah, just do 10 banded pull ups. So I think there's a lot of variance in the coaching, and a good affiliate will have coaches who are good at scaling down the workout for the members who
right.
can't RX everything at the rep scheme, but still get the reps or still accumulate reps in the RX category of that movement. I think that's important rather than just like, oh yeah, if you can't do this workout as prescribed, just scale everything down entirely, and
Right.
then you have this big gap of people who can do it or they can't do it, so they scale too much. And I think that's where good coaching comes into play, is like having people scale the right amount.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, when you said if you can't do double unders, the first thing that came to mind was, yeah, 2-to-1 single unders, because that's what we do, right? And that's what you see in competition scaling, or that's just what you see, you know, the standard becoming. And I think I, if I chalk it up to kind of even my own experience as a coach, sometimes it just goes down to lazy coaching, right? Where it's like,
Yeah,
oh
I
shit,
think there's a lot of that.
I didn't think about that. I didn't think about what would be an appropriate scale. Couldn't we try maybe if this person can't do 50 double unders, but maybe it takes a person who can do double unders 20-ish seconds, then do 20 seconds of attempts. How about that
Right.
instead?
Yep, that's a
Where
that's a great way to scale.
but it's just like that idea of, look, man, like scaling is not an afterthought, right? There needs to be part of your classroom preparation, right? Just like in a classroom, you have people of different ability levels. You can't just be like, all right, if you can't read the if you can't read the chapter, read half with a partner or something.
Yeah.
Like maybe that works sometimes, but that doesn't work all the time, and it doesn't work for everybody, right? It needs to be
Yeah.
individualized to an extent, and that's always going to be part of the magic of what happens in the coaching floor. And I think that's what coaches love to do is approaching those challenges and being open to them. And seeing what you're going to come up with and, revise from there and make that part of your toolbox.
Yeah, and I think, in every profession, right, there's A players, B players, C players, and I think the A player coaches are the ones that are gonna get creative with their scaling, and they're gonna
Mhm.
treat every class as this is a chance for me to help the people who attend my gym advance, and they're gonna take the extra time to really focus on scaling and go from athlete to athlete and be like, "Hey, you know, what are you struggling with here? What are you planning to do for this workout?" And they'll
Yeah.
be like, I think that might be a little too easy for you. How about you try this instead?" Like you said, 20 seconds of attempts, or instead of 50 double unders, you're doing 20 or 25 or even 15, like scale
Yeah.
appropriately and give them permission to, rather than just have like a
Mhm.
blanket, well, can't do it, then you do this. And just the blanket coaching, I think, is where sometimes people, yeah, they get a little lazy as coaches, but everyone's different.
Yeah.
I mean, I've, for every time that I've been frustrated with the coaching and scaling at various drop-in gyms that I've gone to, I've
Mhm.
been equally impressed, and I've learned things from
Right.
all around the world from people where it's like, oh wow, yeah, that's a really good scale for double unders,
Mhm.
or that's a really good scale for toes to bar. So I think it all comes down to some coaches are really focused on their craft and others aren't, and I think as the CrossFit space gets more saturated, or as
Yeah.
people continue coaching and people try out different gyms in their area, they'll realize the good ones from the ones that are maybe a little lazy with that.
Is that something that you find yourself doing and liking to do? I mean, I travel every now and again. I live abroad now. I'm from California myself, and I've been living in China for the last 12 years. And then sometimes I'll just go on vacation on my own or with my family. But one thing I love to do if I'm in a new city is drop into a gym. And as a person who enjoys CrossFit and as a coach, I just love to drop in because I love to learn.
Yeah,
Because I want to see how people coach certain movements. I want to see how people approach scaling, and I love seeing the creativity that people can get with that, with this thing that is universal in the sense that you drop into a CrossFit gym, you know what you're expecting to for the most part, but there's always surprises around the corner, and I love that aspect, and that just reminded me of kind of the evolution of where you are in WODprep, where when I was watching your videos for my first open, it was just you, like you said, on a military base in Japan, filming on your own, or just someone was filming you, but it was WODprep was you. But like Ben from WODprep was Ben is WODprep. Today,
right.
looks like you have quite a team, and it looks like you've gone from not just preparing for workouts, but also educating others. So can you tell me a little bit of like the evolution of where WODprep was then to where it is today, and kind of what it looks like today, and who you're
Sure.
helping?
Yeah, back in the day, it was just me. All those military base videos from back in the day.
Mhm.
They were actually, I think the first time I filmed, basically I asked for permission to to film, and they just denied it. They're like, "Nope, you can't do that. You can't film, fitness company videos on this base. You have to be a
Sure.
certified personal trainer through the Navy."
Yeah.
I was just like, "Man, whatever. I don't believe that. Like, what are you gonna do?" I asked for forgiveness. I asked for permission. They said no, so now I'm just gonna do it
Yeah.
anyway. So a lot of those videos were me just like with a little GoPro, like hiding it on a tripod and filming it. And
Okay, now that makes so much sense now.
yeah, yeah. So
Watching
I
these
feel like the video
videos.
quality was terrible, and it was just me just kind of like out on a outdoor pad. And sometimes it was really, really
Yeah.
cold out in Japan. And since then, it's, while I was in Japan, I hired a couple people, and it's just the company's grown, since 2014, it's grown. And, the first person I hired was I think it was a video editor. So the first person I hired was a video editor because it was taking me so long to edit videos.
Mm,
Second person I hired, I think, was more customer support. And then I just kept hired a coach, and just kind of kept hiring people. And now WODprep, I think we have 12 people on the team, that work in various capacities. And yeah, I
mm,
have a team full of coaches now that are great coaches. It's funny. I think when it comes to hiring, you always want to hire someone who's better than you
mhm.
at what you do, or what you want to outsource. And I've definitely done that with my coaches. I'd say my coaches are much better coaches than I am, and that's why they do most of the coaching inside of WODprep. And really, the
Nice.
only thing left for me in WODprep, other than like being the CEO and trying to come up with decisions and the focus of the
Mm,
company, the only thing that I really do still, I guess, the most of is like being in front of camera. And that's about it. Everybody else, all the other positions have been, replaced and hired for great people. And now even
Yeah.
still, I have great people who can do stuff in front of the camera. Um,
Mm.
so it's been quite a development, and it's been great. And we're still kicking. I think now WODprep's been it'll be 11 years now this February, or probably right about now is when I started. I bought the domain, so 11 years ago to
Yeah.
today, and it's been a great journey. So that's the key. It's like whenever you're growing, if you have the revenue is higher than your expenses and you have some profit in there, you can either
Mm.
just take it all for yourself, or you can help the company grow by kind of like removing your bottlenecks. And
Yeah.
I identified bottlenecks in video editing, in coaching, in customer support, in all web development, all kinds of stuff. And I've just kind of systematically outsourced the things that I wasn't uniquely good at, and
Mm.
now all that's left is like the things that I'm good at, pretty much, and the things that I want to do.
And, the idea of like hiring people who can fill the gaps where you see the need, in terms of like, growing your mission and growing your company, has it been mostly like something that you go but intuitively like, this looks like something that we can improve on, or you have someone that's crunching the numbers for you? Like what does that growth like trajectory look like?
Yeah, it was more of like, I think the way I can ascribe the growth is do more of what's working. So, especially back in the day, and even to this day, we do experiments, we try new products, we
Mhm.
promote different offers, we come up with basically initially WODprep was I identified a gap where all the content out there was focused on elite athletes, but there was this middle,
Right.
85% of the market, or bottom 85% of the market, that didn't have any content for them. So I started focusing on content for them.
Mm.
And obviously, since then, lots of other people have come into the space. There's a lot of other online coaches and programs now. And really, what we've done is try to cultivate a community that where people really know, like, and trust us. And then we
Mm.
focus on what are things that these people want from us uniquely. So over the years, it started off with the first course that I ever released was a muscle up course. And it
Mm.
went well. People bought it and they saw great results. And then I was like, what course do you guys want next? And a bunch of people emailed me and said, I really need help with double unders. Any tips? Okay, I made a double under course. And then it was just kind
Yeah.
of like slowly but surely we started filling in all the gaps where people wanted my coaching uniquely, and what product could I make that would help them solve the problem that they
Mm.
have. And that's kind of like where we are today, is we're still identifying, and we've kind of covered it all. So it's been a little harder recently to like, all right, what's next? It's more of just focusing
Yeah.
on, there's still so many athletes out there that need to learn how to do these movements, and they don't know that we have the solution to give them. They might watch our
Mhm.
videos, they might watch some open stuff from us. They're aware of WODprep, but they don't know that we actually have like a step-by-step solution to give them.
Yeah.
And it's just more of trying to find where those people are, get our athletes to tell other athletes at their gym, um, finding ways to get people interested in what we have to offer, and show them that we're a brand that can help them out.
Mm. And I think, like we talked about before, is the sport evolves too, right? Where nowadays a wall walk is something that is just part of what we do. Even if you can do handstand walks, but when it first came out in the open, it was like, oh, that's like a warm up movement. Like what? How did I never realize that this is actually a hard thing to do? If you ask me to do 10 reps, in
Right.
a 10-minute AMRAP. So there's that aspect of it as well. But I think you're relating to it where people come in new to the sport all the time. And the likelihood of them watching a 10-year-old video might be there, but if you give new content, in the presentation that people expect nowadays, I guess, and perhaps the methodology has evolved too from 10 years to today. There's always that chance to reiterate something that you've done
Mhm.
before. So kind of, putting a new spin on things, and that's
Oh yeah,
something that,
and we've made the same. Let's use double unders as an example.
yeah.
I have a lot of very, very old videos on how to learn double unders, but we also have a lot
Mhm.
of very new videos with better camera equipment, full-fledged video studios, better editing, everything's better about it. We're still teaching pretty much the same concepts and the same tips and stuff like that, just
Yeah.
doing it in a way that's a little bit better and more professional. And yeah,
Mhm.
that's our we're a media company just as much as we are a coaching
Sure.
company. So it's all
Right.
about creating the media that people want to
Yeah.
engage with. We've gone really heavy on Instagram lately, and that's been exploding. And
Mhm.
it's all about just like creating the kind of content that's going to give the people the results that they want
Yeah.
to achieve in the medium that they want to digest it in.
Okay, so as we kind of looking into the bigger picture of kind of where we started with the idea of CrossFit and people trying to do best in the sport, you know, the CrossFit Open is coming up, right? We're about 6 weeks or less from the Open beginning, and this is like a big year of change for a lot of people who are in the sport, right? Either whether or not they're competitive or this is just something they like to do. The sport, it always changes, but this is a special year of change, right? You have new a new season structure. You have competitors like the World Fitness Project. Just a lot of change left, right, and center. Could you, in like right now, be in the CEO seat for CrossFit, for example, for a second? What would you do to grow the sport? To maximize participation and to have more people, love what this sport is. Like, is there something that
Yeah.
you see? If you could make the change, what would the change be?
Yeah, if I was the CEO and I was the one making decisions for CrossFit, I probably wouldn't have gotten rid of quarterfinals. I would have kept that because I think it
Mm,
gave a lot of people something to strive for to be in that top 25%.
yeah.
That was really cool. And then to see them go away from it was frustrating. The thing that I would do
Mhm.
is long term, I would do the same thing. I would keep the same season structure for at least a few seasons. I think that's
That would be nice.
a lot of people is there's just been so many changes. It's like, one year the handstand push-up standard is this, and then the next year it's that, and then the next year it's this and that, and they're
Mhm.
just like always changing it. And then on top of that, they're always changing the season structure. It's like one year they release quarterfinals where everybody competes the top 25%. And
Yeah.
then this year, poof, it's gone. So I think that's the instability in the market, I think is kind of coming down from the top. Now,
Mhm.
excuse me. Now, I'm not the one who is behind the scenes seeing the data and the numbers. Like I hope that they're
Mhm.
making data-driven decisions. I hope that they have a long-term plan. But in the past like 5 years, it's like, guys, what's the long-term plan here? Why does it keep changing? It almost seems like there isn't one. I'm
Yeah.
hoping that this season structure that they've created and they now have will stick around because then
Mhm.
the athletes at the top, the even the normal people who just go to an affiliate and want to participate in the open, hopefully with that consistency, it creates some stability, and then with some stability we'll see some growth. But the constant changes and obviously the tragedy that happened at the games, right?
Mhm.
There's been I think frustration from the top in terms of athletes. There's been
Mhm.
frustration. They don't like how if this is a professional sport, why does it change? Like
Yeah.
the NFL hasn't made that many changes, or the MLB hasn't made that many changes in
Exactly.
a very long time. Why do we keep changing it up? If we want to be a professional sport, we got to have some consistency. So I think step
Mhm.
number one would be consistency. Step number two, which I think they're doing, and I don't really have a pulse on it because it's not necessarily our market, but I think they're trying to work with the athletes. There's
Mhm.
obviously going to be competitors that come into the space, and it is what it is. They can't. I don't think they can keep a lock on functional fitness competitions,
Yeah.
right? But if they're trying to be the NFL or be the MLB or be the NBA, whatever it is, if they have to have consistency, they have to, I think, probably maybe start paying their athletes
Mhm.
better. Because just having prizes at the games is it's tough to professionalize a sport when it's mainly prize focused. But it'll be an interesting couple years. I'm always an optimist. I hope that
Mhm.
CrossFit can regain its momentum and I think that again comes through consistency. I am excited about the what do they call it? The affiliate cup, which
Yes.
I don't know if that's a good name for it because at the
Community Cup,
community
right?
cup. Um,
Yeah.
I like that idea. I think having people ranked on like a percentile basis and then having them compete against other people in that percentile, I think that's pretty cool. Like I'm
Mhm.
excited to see how that goes. It'll be interesting to see what kind of buy-in the community has. Like I would have liked to have seen that implemented a few years ago before all the
Mhm.
craziness happened and everyone thought of, hated CrossFit for a while. Um, so I'm optimistic and I
Yeah.
hope that the overall business does well. And I think that even though, we're a business within the overall realm of CrossFit, my job
Mhm.
and my goal is I always just try to make people who do CrossFit have a better experience because I want them to go
Right.
to a local affiliate. I want them to sign up for the Open. I
Right.
want them to be avid promoters of CrossFit as both a methodology and a company. So I am very much a fan of CrossFit, and I hope that
Mhm.
they grow. Whatever other businesses pop up, the bottom line is I want people. I think that people can change their lives if they go to a
Mhm.
CrossFit gym and they do high intensity functional movement, uh, uh, constantly varied high intensity functional movement. And I think that'll change a lot of lives. So whatever gets people to fall in love with that more, that's what I'm
Yeah.
hoping. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's my take on it. Is like, yeah, it hasn't been the last couple years has definitely felt like CrossFit has shrunk. There's been
Mhm.
instability. It's been,
Yes.
a little worrisome. I think that naturally people are frustrated with various things and they're like, I don't want to register for the Open because I don't want to support CrossFit HQ. But I
Mhm.
think that the overall community of CrossFit is a good thing, even if maybe the brand at the top people are frustrated with. I
Yeah.
think registering for the Open, paying a local affiliate, those are good things that will have a positive impact in the world. And I hope people sign up for the Open because I think it's a great test. It's not that expensive and it does, it helps support your local affiliate because when you're more
Mhm.
involved with the Open and you're excited about the Open and you show up for Friday night lights, it just makes CrossFit
Yep.
a really special place and something that the competitors like F45 and other random Globo gyms and, you know, CrossFit gyms that don't actually have CrossFit affiliations, they can't recreate that. And I think
Mhm.
registering for the Open and doing it and being a part of the CrossFit community, even if you're frustrated with the business at the top, still overall supporting it with your dollars and your time and your efforts will help the mission grow and expand. And I hope that we can get back on a upward trajectory as a brand as a whole.
That's cool, and that's very well said, especially, the whole idea of the community is really what brings people together. And yes, there is the competitive sport, but no matter what the CrossFit officially is, the methodology is always going to be there, and the people who want to come together into a room and share their sweat on the floor. That is something that's never going to change, no matter what you call it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of the Open. Is what I remember always experiencing since 2017. Is it's a big challenge and you push yourself past your limit, you puke in a bucket or you try not to. And there's not a lot of times during the year where you get to do that and look forward to it for some reason.
Yeah, and that's another
And
thing I would
that's
say is
that's
like
great.
I think the Open, like when you're actually registered and you're signed up and you're like, I have to put my best, like if I want to actually see what I'm capable of, I have
Mhm.
to truly put my best effort forth and do my best on this workout. Even me, non-competitive, like I don't really care about my Open score, but I
Yeah,
still register, I still show up and I still do my best. It pushes me to a level that I cannot experience in
for
training. And I
sure.
think that's even if you don't compete, there's something about actually pushing
Mhm.
yourself to your true limits that the Open brings that no other thing can do other than maybe like actual like local competitions.
Yeah.
There's just something about the Open that like it gets people to try things that they've never tried before. Like when double unders show up in the Open, there's going to be
Mhm.
tens of thousands of people this year who are like, I can't do double unders, but I'm going to try them, and they're going to do them, and that is only
Yeah.
because the Open is forcing you to do them. And
Right.
I think that's a really special thing. A lot of people push themselves out of their comfort zones when they actually participate in the open, and they get these
Mhm.
what I call aha moments where they're like, "Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I didn't think I could ever do that, and I just did my first double under, muscle up, pull up, whatever it is,
Yes, exactly.
and it's because of the open." And I think that is a very unique thing to the CrossFit Open, and that's why I'm
Yeah.
extremely bullish on people registering, because it just gets them to a place that they don't experience in training.
So let's end on just that question, right? Someone is like considering doing the open, or someone has signed up for their first open, is super nervous about it. 6 weeks, you know, in the grand scheme of things, is not a lot of time to improve on your CrossFit abilities. So what would be like that one, if you can give one piece of practical advice you would give someone who's going to go into their first open or their 10th open and they're not sure about how they're going to do? Like if they have 6 weeks, what's one thing they could do?
The first thing I would do is I would ask myself, have a genuine, tough conversation and say, out of the following movements, which one am I unable to perform, but I'm close to learning it?
Mm,
Meaning there's always usually one or two limiters where people are like, oh, if that shows up in the open, I'm doomed. But they always show up in the open every year. So it's time to focus on those, what I call those dominoes. Like what's one thing you can learn that you can knock over pretty quickly. Then in the next six
yeah.
weeks, I don't think you're gonna see tremendous gains in strength. You
Mhm.
know, like you don't need to worry about PRing your snatch. If you do, it's great. You don't need to PR your clean. What you do need to focus on are the gymnastics and skill movements. So like double unders. If you can't do
Mhm.
double unders, they're gonna come in the open. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
But between now and the open, you have plenty of time to learn how to do unbroken double unders if you actually put in 15 to 20 minutes of practice a few times per week.
Mm.
Same thing with something like toes to bar, or maybe learning how to get your first chest to bar pull up. Or for those who are like on the bubble of maybe learning a bar muscle up, now is the time
Right.
to try to get that first muscle up consistently. You have plenty of time to practice. A lot of times, these gymnastic movements, you have the strength and the capability. You just haven't put all the pieces together to make it click in your
Mhm.
head. And this is the time where you need to be practicing all of those skills that are not very good for you. Focus on one or two of them that are always going to show up in the open. I would say double unders is the leader. You have
Mhm.
toes to bar. You have chest to bar pull ups and ring or bar muscle ups.
Mhm.
Those are kind of like the keys. It's like if you focus on learning one of those that you can't do between now and the open and really focus some effort. Again, all it takes is about 15 to 20 minutes per session, 3 days per week. That's what I would focus on.
Would you add in that toolbox of skills in gymnastics, would you add a variation of handstand push-ups and or wall walks?
Yes, and the hard thing with that is like in the open, we don't know if handstand pushups are going to show up. Sometimes they do,
Mhm.
sometimes they don't. Sometimes there's a
Yeah.
variation of wall walks, which is a very different movement, strength requirement.
Mhm.
So that's why I didn't put those in like the top list.
Mhm.
If you if that it like let's say you can do all the like if you can do the other movements that I mentioned, but you
Mhm.
can't do handstand pushups, then yes, handstand pushups is what I would focus
Okay.
on. But if you can't do handstand pushups, but you also can't do double unders, then no, focus on double
I
unders.
see. Yeah.
And so I would put that. That's like the four that I mentioned are like S tier, meaning like you need to learn them. They're
Yes.
going to be in the open in some capacity. And then A tier would probably be, uh, like the next level down would probably be handstand pushups, because we don't know what kind is going to show up in the open. Maybe it's going
Yeah.
to be a strict, maybe it'll be kipping, maybe it'll just be a wall walk. We don't really know because it
There's way
changes.
too much variation out there.
There's too much variation to say like, oh yeah, you definitely need to learn this. So
Yeah. Got it. Nice and practical. Ben from WODprep. This has been a great conversation. If people want to know more about your projects, your coaching, your programming, everything, where can we find you?
yeah, so we're available on pretty much all the platforms except for TikTok, even though think we have a TikTok. I don't use it. Um, so if you want to watch more long form content, more deep
Yeah.
dive instructional videos, go over to youtube.com/WODprep. Quicker tips. A lot of content happens over on Facebook and Instagram. So Instagram.com/WODprep, Facebook.com/WODprep. Or if you just want to go straight to the source, go to WODprep.com. We have blog posts with lots of good content about how to learn all the movements. We have free training guides. And if you are someone who's like, I want to learn a specific skill or all the skills to take me from scale to RX, just go to WODprep.com and then look at our courses and WODprep Academy and our programming. We have a lot of different things that can help you go from scale to RX.
Right on. And one probably silly question. Every time I watch your videos, you introduce yourself as, "Hi, I'm Ben from WODprep."
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a native English speaker. I was born and raised in California. Well, not born in California, but raised in California. And I literally thought for the longest time that your last name was from WODprep or something like that. So
That's funny.
what is your actual name?
My last name is Dziwulski. It's like Polish, and it's Dziwulski. So I'm Ben Dziwulski from WODprep. But yeah, it was like really early on. I was like, "Hey, what's up? It's Ben from WODprep," and now it's like something that it's kind
Yeah.
of like a bit now. It's like that's what I do in front of every single YouTube video.
All right. Well, Ben Dziwulski from WODprep, thank you so much for your time and have a great open with you and your athletes.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Before we say goodbye, here's one crazy statistic for you. Did you know that almost 40% of people who listen to the show don't actually subscribe to it? Now, I didn't think that was a big deal until I actually learned about the power of hitting subscribe. For you, the listener, you get to stay up to date when we drop episodes on a weekly basis. But for us as a podcast, it really helps our visibility and helps us attract great brands and great listeners to help grow this podcast. So if you enjoyed this episode or you're a big fan of the show, please do us a massive favor and hit subscribe. Thank you so much.